Throughout the entire Dexter series, we have seen countless outrageous theories proposed on the internet. Although some of these theories range from being somewhat understandable to downright stupid, they all have one thing in common, which is delusion. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 5 of the dumbest Dexter theories to ever thrive on the internet, seeing which ones have potential and which ones were destined to fail. Let's start off by covering the most sane theory on this list by far, which is the idea that Dexter actually had autism. In a Reddit post by Ash Clover titled "Is Dexter Just Autistic with a Special Interest in Killing / Blood?" it's explained that Dexter constantly puts his shoe in his mouth with Rita or Deb when trying to comfort them and doesn't have a natural instinct for social interactions and feelings. He abides by a strict routine in life and a code. This also fits into autism, as when these things are broken, he has a meltdown. When he is given an out to killing and is able to explore his feelings in a different way with Lila, he doesn't kill but still hyper-focuses on blood. The code was instilled in him by Harry, and we all know where that got him. I'm wondering if Dex was groomed into being the killer he is rather than his mother's death, making him into the Bay Harbor Butcher, because we all know how insistent Harry was on pushing Dex to become the person he is today. These aspects in regards to Dexter potentially having autism are to some extent real. However, the critique on his behavior is not something that is specifically tied into autism itself and is rather more complicated. He does undoubtedly suffer from social anxiety, not knowing how to respond in an actually smooth and rhythmic way, and oftentimes comes out sounding robotic. Let's not forget that Dexter isn't just some regular guy who grew into this extremely problematic habit of killing. His childhood was messed up in ways that are beyond imaginable and would probably leave professional modern-day psychologists baffled as to what's actually going on in his psyche. For example, users on the internet debunk this theory by stating the blatant obvious, which in some cases is the best argument. No, I don't believe that's the case. I believe Dexter has severe PTSD, and another explaining that he has idiot father syndrome. Dude gets told he's a monster for his whole life and no help. This tied into the idea that Harry was essentially the villain all along, which is another video in and of itself, is a highly plausible reason to believe he actually suffered from high-functioning autism. Due to it never being brought up in the original series, it's likely that we will never really know whether or not Dexter truly had this disorder, and it's still up for question on this fine line between stupidity and enlightenment.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's actually a theory out there that Dexter's neighbor was the one to kill Rita in season 4 of Dexter. I'm not kidding. This one came from Professor Villain on TikTok, who explains that no one actually saw Rita's death on screen and that no one actually knows the true identity of Rita's murderer. And while it's true that we didn't see Rita's killer on screen and that the identity of the Trinity killer at large wasn't exactly exposed, I think there are some problems inherently with this one. Honestly, people really need to take the things that they see at face value on screen sometimes. Like, some things are directly shown to us, or at least heavily insinuated upon, and obviously when it came to the Trinity killer, we knew the story, we knew the ways he did his murders, and we knew how that tied directly into Dexter himself. So it really fit the narrative very clearly that the Trinity killer, Arthur Mitchell, was the one to actually do the murders, not Dexter's neighbor. I mean, yes, again, I understand on paper how it could seem like maybe there's a little bit of room for interpretation there, but it was pretty clearly spelled out to us. Like, if this was something that actually had credibility, they would have definitely pointed this out in the show, or at least covered it in the seasons to come within it, but there's a reason that they never did, and it's because the narrative there really did make sense. It really is plain and simple that the Trinity killer had a one-up on Dexter in that moment. I mean, it definitely goes without saying that a twist like that would certainly be entertaining, but it just doesn't fit the narrative that they were telling us throughout that entire season. I don't know, I mean, I'm always up for a juicy theory for sure, and this one is kind of interesting to talk about, but again, the answer was just right in front of us, and I think it really is as plain as that. DNads, thank you so much for having me on. Now back to the rest of the video.
In hindsight, the idea that Harrison in New Blood could have actually been Cody from the original series is somewhat believable. However, upon doing some digging, it's almost disturbingly wrong for various reasons. In a Reddit post made 3 years ago by a user named Slight Edition 5645, it's described that in season 4, Cody sees Dexter as his father. If the original show premiered sometime in 2006, Cody looked about 5, making him 20-ish years old. So it's totally plausible that he's Harrison. Grandparents could have died, Aster could have had her own drug problem / situation like seen in season 5. Harrison said he had a drug problem a couple years back and hinted that he was on the streets, and it was shown that he took dangerous drugs at a party. Definitely more in line with his real father, Paul, who was an addict, and more in line with the timeline of how old Harrison appears. This theory looks to be somewhat understandable at first glance. Even I, when watching New Blood, was confused by the sudden disappearance of Harrison's bright blonde hair to a more dark brown color. But the main issue with this conspiracy is the misunderstood timeline of New Blood and Harrison's actual age in the spin-off. One user on this Reddit thread perfectly debunks this theory and even shows how comedic / disturbing it is in terms of age differences. They've said 10 years have passed. Cody would be like 19 / 20 years old. I highly doubt dude would be hanging out in high school and kissing teen girls. Harrison does look about 15 to 17 years old. Also, yes, blonde kids can grow up to be brunette in any climate. Upon doing some more research, it's actually true that young children's hair, once blonde, can turn to darker shades of brown in their adolescent years. This is one thing that at the time confused me in New Blood, like I'm sure it did many others. It could be the showrunners wanting to leave suspense and theory speculation in the air just for the sake of promoting the show. But it's undoubtedly false that Harrison is Cody, and maybe we'll just have to wait for Dexter Resurrection to finally prove it.
Alright, now buckle up because this theory takes a sharp left turn into deep fan fiction territory, and honestly, I kind of love it. So according to some fans, the season 8 finale, titled Remember the Monsters, wasn't just the end of Dexter's life as we know it. It was the end, period. Yup, this theory suggests that when Dexter drove straight into that massive hurricane, he actually died. And that whole lumberjack life that we see at the very end of the episode, that's not just survival, that's purgatory. Like, if we truly think about it, Dexter sailed directly into a storm so intense that it literally shredded his boat into ruins. And the wreckage was found, but there was no sign of Dexter himself whatsoever. Batista even gets a call confirming that they found his boat, but no Dexter inside. Like, realistically, if this show played by the laws of physics and common sense, Dexter would have actually been fish food. Like, there's no way that he swims away from that mess alive whatsoever. But, you know, he did. So what if the lonely lumberjack version of Dexter isn't the real world, but a quiet, isolated dimension where he's forced to confront the weight of his sin? Eternal solitude, no kills, no connections, just trees and torment. Now here's where I half buy it. The idea that he died, totally possible, and it makes sense. That storm was nature's version of a giant middle finger, and Dexter drove right into it. But the purgatory part, I mean, I don't know, it's a bit too much. I mean, like, if Dexter did die, I'm not sold on the whole entire metaphysical punishment angle. But hey, it's Dexter. He's always lived in the gray area between life and death anyway, so who knows?
Now, in the past few months, there have been countless videos that discuss certain characters knowing Dexter's dark secrets, such as Lundy, Quinn, and Matthews, but by far the most outrageous theory that's been proposed is Masuka knowing Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher the entire time. It's argued that Masuka isn't just comedic relief and is an expert in the field of blood spatter analysis. He worked closely on the Bay Harbor Butcher case, examining the victims in the body bag. It's described that Masuka, who is famously known for his comedy in the show, puts subtle meaning behind his jokes that tie into the suspicions of him knowing Dexter's dark side, such as when he called Dexter a blood fetishist in season 1. Due to Dexter's quick and perfect responses, it's explained that Masuka, whose intelligence is above average, caught onto his lies. These videos also go as far to say he stayed quiet because he feared Dexter's malicious tendencies and began to think Dexter was doing more good than bad, leading him to not interfere with his dark passenger. In the series, Masuka is an interesting character to say the least, but I can wholeheartedly say that he in fact had no clue Dexter was the butcher. Although he is highly intelligent in the field of forensic analysis, I tend to believe he lacks other types of smarts when it comes to having that gut feeling Dokes had in season 2. His sexual jokes and weirdness also leads me to think that he's really just someone who stays to himself and his nerdy hobbies, not really focusing on what others are doing. When it comes to Quinn and Lundy, I think it's more arguable that they possibly knew due to the show giving them their own in-depth storylines that at the time came close to unveiling Dexter's secret then and there. However, something about Masuka is that we don't really know what he does outside of Miami Metro. We don't necessarily follow him except for when he had a small storyline in season 8 with his daughter. This is just a few key points that can be argued against this claim theory and is downright dumb when it comes to the landscape of conspiracies in regards to Dexter on the internet. Although some of them tend to hold value at first glance, they can be easily debunked with a little bit of insight into what they actually propose, which most of the time is stupid. I want to greatly thank Jerry's Takes and Movie Critics Club for collaborating with me on this video and for their dedication, bringing you guys a good piece of content. Their channels will be linked in the description, so make sure to check them out as they make awesome videos that discuss Dexter related concepts in a unique light. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see a part 2, please let me know in the comments down below. And as well, I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed for more videos like this in general. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.